This week on A Brief History Conspiracy.
Evidence of the Anunnaki.
Sweet.
Yeah.
The big thing he talks about though is these cattle kraals.
Yes.
And these things are interesting.
Very.
So they've been back from 1891. Somebody, it's called Theodore Bent, sort of found these things, and basically, again, mainstream science says they're
Cattle corrals for holding
Corrals.
penning cattle. I assume
holding the cattle for you. Yeah, it's fair enough. It's impressive that they were doing this in Africa a couple of thousand years ago.
No, yeah.
Because again, mainstream science says these are only a few thousand years old. Tellinger says that they're at least 50,000 years old.
Yep.
Roger Summers in the late 80s said that he thinks there's actually more like 20,000 of these things, whereas Theodore Bent said there was only about 4,000. Michael Tellinger himself estimates there are 10 to 20 million of these things, but he doesn't really give a great deal of evidence on how he got to that number. It seems to be a guess.
Although from looking at Google Maps of South Africa, I can confirm that there are a lot of these cattle kraals littered across the South African countryside, if you could call it countryside.
10 to 20 million though. Okay, if we believe that they are for cattle,
yep.
If there's say 10 million of these things,
yep.
Right? Say you only hold 100 cattle in each one.
Yep.
That's 1 billion.
Yeah, it's 1 billion cattle.
Right, but say you're not only using them all. So say even if it's only 500 million, that's still a third of all the cattle we have today.
Yes.
We only have about 1.4 billion cattle today.
And a third of those were all centralised in South Africa.
Where the population of the planet was only 10 or 20,000.
The sheer number of these cattle kraals,
it's insane.
Would indicate that there was a much larger population there, or they weren't used for penning cattle.
So yeah, the other thing that Tellinger does point out as well, that these things don't have any ways in and out for the cattle.
Yeah, no openings.
Which I don't know about you, but they're not big jumpers as far as I'm aware.
No.
Cattle. You know, these things are built from stone and they are reasonably high. And even if you did, if the cow can just step over them or jump over them, they're not very good at keeping cattle in, are they?
It's not much of a cattle pen, is it?
No.
No.
So the mainstream science, I believe this one might be wrong.
I've got a feeling they're wrong. I've got a feeling they've put together their best theory from the evidence available. But
because in other areas you would see things like this, these cattle pens and things, but we tend to put gates on them. Even back in the day, there'd be an opening where there'd be a chunk of wood across. It wouldn't necessarily be a nicely made gate, but you know, you built them to keep the cattle in. There's no point having one. And all these kraals as well, there is significant evidence of roads between them all.
Yes,
so they were used, they were walked, these were important.
Yes.
For cattle, I don't know. The other thing is they're built out of this weird resonating stone as well, that Tellinger at one point does this thing and he lifts it and dong, and it makes a very pretty sound. I've tried to look into that. I don't know why they're using that stone.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like the theory behind the resonating frequency of, So there's a theory, isn't there, as to how the pyramids were potentially built, and Coral Castle, where that guy on his own managed to construct a building or a structure out of megalithic blocks, and he claimed to use acoustic or sound in order to lift these massive stones, which would tie into the resonating frequency of something.
Tellinger talks about these ice cream cone shaped cones that he finds everywhere. He says everywhere he goes he finds them, and there was an eyewitness that suggested the chap at the Coral Castle was seen by children with ice cream cone shaped rocks picking up the other stones.
Yes.
Now my scientific brain can't. This is where we're going a bit left field for me. I can't see how that would I just can't see how it would work.
Focusing sound waves.
Yeah, but how do you focus sound wave through stone? What are you wiring up to? What's the?
You're somehow focusing the sound wave at a sound wave that happens to be at the resonating frequency of the object that you're lifting.
Yeah.
Which
now that's important. Now, if we go back to the resonating frequency thing, that is important.
Yes.
And I do understand the science of that.
Yeah.
That you can use sound, particularly to break objects.
Yeah, you can
and
break
you don't need
glass with
powerful.
sound.
It's not like you scream at something you can break it. You can actually use normal sound, but if you get it to the right frequency, everything vibrates. And if you can get a sound wave to use the right frequency that it's vibrating at, you can affect it.
So, so the easiest way to look at sound is to look at water, because sound travels as a wave. So the reason that you're using the resonating frequency is to get the interference pattern of two different waves. So the amplitude builds, it doubles, rather than the interference of two waves like cancelling each other out and being a null. You want it. You want the interference of the two wave patterns
to increase the wave rather than to nullify each other.
Yeah, so the amplitude doubles, and that's how you can break glass.
And this is why you don't need a significant energy if you're using the right frequency. And this is why you could potentially move things. Now, the one thing I did generally go was when we were at Stonehenge.
Yes.
When we were at Stonehenge, which if you go back to our previous video, I'll put the thing on. They were flashing up images of things that had been found over the thousands of years since Stonehenge, and one of them was or multiple ice cream cone shaped stones.
Yeah,
with patterns engraved on them, and that did make me sort of go, "Oh shit!" That Tellinger thing I watched.
And how much of a similarity it is with Tellinger and the cattle
We have
crowds.
no idea how we're going to do Stonehenge. We've got no idea how Stonehenge was built, but shit, that was like a Jesus moment for me.
Also, seeing the 20-ton stone block that lays horizontally across the vertical blocks, and then going, how did they lift that there? Even if they brought all those stones in,
Coral Castle without massive cranes. I don't know how he did it. So it's weird. The other thing he says about these corals, though, is that they have odd properties, and he says it's made because of these resonating stones. Again, I would want to see somebody else go and do this, because I haven't even seen videos of him doing it. But he says that when you walk into these corals, GPS stops working.
Yes, he does say that,
which makes no sense. It's somehow blocking the signal. So it's ionising the air somehow and blocking the GPS. It also says that the heat rises. As you walk in, they can go up anything by about 7 or 8 degrees centigrade. So
significant thermal fluctuations as well.
Yeah, as you walk into them. And again, I've not seen any evidence to actually back that up, but that's what he says. He then went very left field for me, though, and said that, and he points to one specific coral, quite a large one. He said, well, this is the one that destroyed Atlantis.
I think that's a bit of a assumption.
I'm going to go stretch.
More than a stretch, because if Atlantis was destroyed by some kind of energy wave created from a cattle crown in South Africa, and there's 10 to 20 million of them, how did you pick the right one, mate? Yeah.
But also, how does the energy go up and then come back down again to Atlantis? I don't understand that either. How are you aiming the damn thing? Because this is the two things. He makes two quite big examples for this, and he makes out that like this is proof. The one, when he's talking about the ice cream cone things, he shows a doctor, a scientist, who was able to create a thing through vibration to boil water.
Yes.
And then he's saying when this guy died, he didn't pass on the technology. Loads of people have been trying to copy it. That's not massively interesting to me. You can do things. We all know that if you hold something that's vibrating really hard, it can burn you. So I don't think if something's at the right frequency that you were talking about, you can boil water with vibration. And it wasn't done through any magical stone or something. This bloke, it had been plugged in. It was a device that was plugged in. You put it in the water and it boils the water. The interesting thing was it boiled it almost instantly.
Yes.
But great. I don't see how that's connected to these resonating stones at all in my head. It's a totally different type of technology. It's interesting, not related to this. Again, talking about this death ray
Yeah.
thing, he talked about there was a cross section of a Japanese microwave weapon that they were trying to design at the end of World War II.
Yes,
and it's got a
the
similar
Japanese
sort
death
of
ray.
cross section. It reminded me of there was an Ancient Aliens video, and it went, if you take a picture of the ancient Mayan calendar as a cross section, it looks an awful lot like a cross section of the Large Hadron Collider. Coincidence? No, not even fucking remotely related. There's nothing. There's genuinely fucking go and Google that. I'm not joking. It's got
That is extremely
they're not
far-fetched.
connected, even remotely related. And that's a similar thing to this. Yes, all right. If you have the cross section of a kraal or a picture of a kraal and a cross section of this Japanese weapon, it was circles with it. It looks like a flower, but that's not related.
You could take cross sections of a lot of things in the physical world, and so they look like a cross section of something else.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're taking cross sections of objects that are roughly the same geometric shape, then of course it will look like the other geometric shape that you make.
Yeah, but if you look for stuff, if you're looking for connections, you're going to find something somewhere.
Yeah,
you're supposed to find evidence, not look for a connection. But anyway. Saying that, the kraals, I don't think they were for cattle, and they are interesting.
I don't think they were for cattle. No,
I
think there's another use.
Far more work done on this to find out what they were actually for.
And I tend to agree with Michael Tellinger that I tend to believe that they're probably more likely far older than we expect, because the history of South Africa, we're told that there's so few people there for so long in the past, and that until about 400 years ago there wasn't more than several thousand people in southern Africa.
I'm just surprised that all the archaeologists didn't do what they always do and go, it's a church. That's what they always said. It's a religious praying site. It's a series of small walls.
I suppose we probably wouldn't have bought that. What, they built a temple? What, there? Oh, there, yeah. And another 10 to 20 million. Or within.
If Tellinger's right on that one, I don't believe the 10 to 20 million, but. Yeah.
Well, yes, okay. We haven't checked into the 10 to 20 million.
No, but I don't think he has either.
I somewhat expect that the number of them is closer to 10 to 20 million than it is to the two previous estimates of 4 or 20,000, though. Because if he's been roaming about South
Theodore
Africa...
Bent was riding around on a horse, and he estimated 4,000. But he was literally riding on a horse. We could do satellite. With satellite, I mean, I think Tellinger is our basic argument. He's using satellite imagery to find them. And then when he's done... I imagine what he's done is taken a small area, counted them, and then times that by the area of Africa.
Yes.
And then got this number.
Or maybe taken several small areas and then averaged 5 small areas and then used that to project across the entire South African terrain.
But,
yeah, and it can still lead to some massive margins of error if you happen to pick your sample sites as the heaviest amount of cattle kraals in that location, then your estimate for the whole of South Africa can be skewed massively by
definitely. And it could just 10. Be I think so maybe not. Right, gold. That's our next bit. That's my thinking. Gold number. Sorry.
An unfortunate schmelting accident.
I guess Trump hasn't moved to this thing we'll have to do a thing on Trump. Trump really likes gold as well. Coincidence? I'm just saying, Trump might be an evil Anunnaki related Mason.
The scary thing is what information Trump's probably now being privy to as the president.
But he's
been briefed on. Something is coming out on Twitter or in a 1 AM press release that he gives, or something's going to come out.
We're going to find out they're aliens on Twitter because of him. Anyway,
it might be good though. Can you imagine Trump just coming out and going, "Oh, by the way, aliens, I've been briefed. It's all real."
Yeah, that's probably how it's going to happen. Gold mining, though.
Yes.
So we know the Anunnaki came here. They wanted gold mining. One of the things Tellinger talks about is that he was being privy to rules about when they're gold mining, if they accidentally come across one of these ancient vertical
ancient mine
shafts, the Americans have basically told them they're to shut it down and not to excavate, not to touch it. And he says he's been privy to somebody told him that this is true, and that these mines are all over the place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of these ancient shafts that mining companies in South Africa come across, like Anglo American, for example. So with this information from Michael Tellinger's videos or documentaries, I thought it wise to ask my father, who worked on the gold mine for Anglo American in South Africa. Yeah, managed one of the gold mines in South Africa. And he was completely unaware of any ancient shafts being found, and had never heard of it in his time there, which was...
How long did it take him to stop laughing at you?
Probably a few minutes. But in all seriousness, he was there for, 8 years in the 80s. So for most of the 80s, he was there managing one of the...
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true.
No, but he just wasn't privy to that information.
We have almost like an insider on this one, and it doesn't seem to be true. So, I don't know. But again, I kind of Googled this, and I was looking for images, and I found a bunch that were just CGI. And this is the thing with this now, that when people genuinely believe these things, and they genuinely have evidence, and they then have a computer, you're asking for trouble. They just believe it so much, they have to have the evidence, and they don't care if they fake it. Or they do it just to get hits on YouTube.
Well, yes, there's a lot of that now, I suppose, in just terms of getting viewing numbers. People don't care whether they're...
But I did find some stories. I did find some stories that did seem to back it up and seem to be interesting. So, so maybe.
Well, I'm not discounting it completely, because if you need to keep a secret, the one way that we know that that's done is compartmentalisation of information from the Americans from World War II, from creating the hydrogen bomb. What was it? 250,000 people were working on the hydrogen bomb. What it was, but only 12 at the top of the pyramidal structure actually knew what the rest of the 249,988 people were doing.
Compartmentalisation of things is really good. That's how they fake the moon landings. So it's another video. Well, mate, that's it really with the evidence on that. What do you think? Do you think there is physical evidence to prove that the Anunnaki were here, or is it just...
The physical evidence is a bit limited, isn't it? There's some there's more circumstantial evidence that ties in with the story of our creation as the slave race, created by the Anunnaki, and then the fact that supposedly Adam's calendar is the birthplace of man.
Circumstantial stuff,
and they built us supposedly the Adamu to mine
gold. That's what the local people believe. They do believe it's called Adam's calendar for a reason. So
So I believe
I don't know.
I believe that there's something more to it than we yet.
We're going to go into Atlantis shortly. I would actually believe this is more to do with some sort of ancient civilization pre Younger Dryas.
Yes.
And evidence of that than evidence of the Anunnaki. For me, that's where I am lying.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's very hard to provide evidence for a superior race that created us when you don't. The only thing that we've got is these cattle kraals. We don't understand what they're used for. We suspect the mainstream hasn't got it right, and they probably weren't cattle kraals, but we still don't know what they were built for, or who they were built by, or when they were built, so there's far too much that's still left open to investigate. I think, to really say conclusively there's any evidence.
I would say I think Tellinger has found some interesting things.
Yes,
and he's found some things that really do deserve more research.
Yes,
I then think he's made connections and leaps that I think are a little bit further than I would go.
Yeah, I think some of the connections he's made are further than I would go as well. What I do like about him, though, is he's out there in his own country trying to find evidence, doing it, trying to find physical hard evidence in and around his home, basically.
And this guy, he's not a stupid guy, and I genuinely think he believes what he's doing. I genuinely think there's lots of other projects he's involved in as well that are really interesting. It's
that Ubuntu
project where he's that's another episode again, but it's to do with banking and the point that
taking on the banks.
Money's only has any value because we agree it does, and that actually, so in that case, does debt have any value? And it goes on and on. But
it's going deep into contract law, basically, and the fact that they didn't have basically, in order for a contract to be valid, both parties have to have what they put up into the contract.
And the
So
bank
if the
doesn't have the
bank's
money.
lending you 250,000, but it only has 25 grand on its balance sheet, and the other 225 is created digitally out of thin air, has it really? Did it have the capital to lend you £250,000 in the first place?
So it's breached the contract before
So it's
even started.
it's void ab initio. So it's
we don't have to pay our mortgages back, people. Just stop paying it immediately.
Yeah, this would be great.
Yeah.
The world will collapse if he succeeds.
But
Yeah.
my mortgage is really expensive.
So collapse of civilization.
Fuck the world.
Bring it on.
My credit card bill needs to be stopped paid. But so he's a very bright guy, and you never know. Maybe he's fucking right.
Yeah.
Maybe we're wrong, but I don't think he's quite there yet for me.
No, I like some of the links. The Anunnaki tying in with creating us to mine gold for them. All the gold mines in South Africa. These ancient structures in South Africa.
Yeah.
The use of sound potentially to move large stone blocks.
I find that very interesting.
Very interesting. So I think he's on to some interesting hypotheses.
The areas we're going to have to come back to. We're going to come back. The real evidence for the Anunnaki, I think, is the Sumerian text, which we're going to come back to, because it's in we're doing this thing in order. The chronology for that is a bit way down the line, and it gives us the opportunity to come back to it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to come back to using sound to move large stones when we do the pyramids, which is again coming up soon, because some of the stones that were being moved were fucking enormous, and again for Stonehenge.
Yes.
So these are all really interesting things. I wonder though whether this is less to do with the Anunnaki and more to do with Atlantis.
Yeah, or more to do with a pre-Younger Dryas human civilization that existed.
Which is what we're going to be doing over the next few episodes. So, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.